Hey, Composer Gloves here, and this is a Sounds Like video. And today I'm going to be showing you how to make this sort of a sound thing. And you can do a lot of variations on it. And it's really, this filter envelope is so darn touchy. So this is the bass sound I had. It's from Pink is Punk and Benassi, Bright Light. What a nice thing. They had an interesting music video, the whole person singing in the car type deal. Well, yeah. So that was the thing I was going for, was sort of this thing. And my first instinct was FM. And you know what? You could do that really easily with FM too. In fact, I opened up Citrus and I got to this far. This sine wave, and then I was like, let's try it with Harmor, because I haven't done one with really where I used Harmor, and this sounds like a sound that could also easily be done with Massive. Actually, this sounds like a sound that could be done with most things. All you need is some way to control distortion as it turns on and off, and the trick is getting their distortion profile. So I'm gonna say right now, mine's obviously not the same as theirs. Mine sounds, whoops, that's not even the sound right here. But it is pretty, it's like, man, where I am right now, I could get to their sound. It's mostly just finding the correct, just the timbre, just getting the timbre right, getting the distortion right. And I don't care to finiddle. I was going to say something that I'm not going to say now. But anyways, I didn't care enough to get that far. Now, this is one of those sounds that also mixing can get you. So I went a little far and I made a little drop. I didn't spend too much time on this. I spent very little time on it, but I had to do it in order to get something similar to this. This is one of those sounds where it's a lot easier to make a sound when you have a drop to base it on, but you also need to get the mixing and the mastering in. So this is my little drop kick drop thing. Let me go to cell, and here we go. So that's it, pretty much in a nutshell. Now, this isn't the rhythm I settled on. They have rhythms similar to this. Theirs are a little different, and they have a big rip at the beginning, and so I had to make just some sort of a rip thing. This is like a really easy sound to do in Harmor. So before I show you what all this is and how to do it, I'm going to tell you right now. Go watch my Harmor from the Ground Up and Sound Design with Harmor series. They are covered in case I'm moving too fast for you. And so, without further ado, let's dive into this patch. Here's the sound by itself. Let me turn it off. And I showed you the number of things that can happen here, but there's a whole bunch of other sort of tricks and dizzles that go with this. So that's as far as I cared to go, as far as getting that close to that sound. I could get closer. I could also try other synths, but the post for the Wobble bass is also quite extensive. Some of these are mixers. So like the limiter, I'm using it, the side chain. I'm using it for side chaining that jazz, and some reverb in post because I used some wave shapers. So originally I had the reverb in Harmor, but I decided not to. So without any of the post, the sound sounds like this. So just the patch by itself. Yeah. So not nearly as impressive. The wave shaper was the big game changer here. So, well, I guess it's a combination of the wave shaper, the EQ. Now, this sounds a little tricky because this is one of those sounds where you make a big fat spectrum and then you just shave crap off. So you do quite a bit of subtractive synthesis on it. And then you use distortion to bring up the timbre that you want. So where you put the distortion in this chain can make quite a large difference. So as you see, just moving I was moving Maximus, but it's the same difference. Just moving crap around. And so yeah, the distortion, the chain is very, very important in a sound like this for the final timbre, which is when you're trying to nail a sound, that's typically what you are trying to get, is the final timbre. There's a glare on my screen that I don't care for. Okay, so what is this? Well, the patch itself actually isn't that complicated. One of the fundamental things is the prism. I'm going to turn post off so we're not duped by stuff, so you can hopefully get to somewhere. Now, I'm just going to explain the patch thoroughly and my ideas about making it. I'm not going to make one in front of you because it just sounds like when you're trying to make it sound like this, you just tend to, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I probably could. I don't know. So anyways, here we go. So I opened it up, turned it down an octave, but I noticed that the timbre was high, the original one, but And I couldn't really gather that much from the look of it because the whole thing was just a mess. Now, I don't have a sub in mind, and that was one thing that was clear, was they had a massive sub tone in there. So if I were to really go after the actual mix that was in it, you'd have to add in a separate sub. But I was going just for that one tone. So I was trying to look at that tone, and it was just a wash because they had all those pads and that voice going and all this other drums. And so it was a little more difficult to see this sound. So I went with my ears, and I pitched it down an octave because I perceived the upper stuff being, I knew it was a one patch deal. It sounded pretty one patch, one instance deal. It didn't sound like a layered sound, or at least I didn't suspect it. And it sounded like they just got rid of the low end and were focusing on the high end. So to do this, you just make a big mess and then you just cut out the crap you don't need. So here, but later on, I realized they had some low end because of that sub. And so on my patch, I decided to add some. And then the other fundamental idea was this kind of a thing, which is something I'm much more prone to do in massive than in Harmer, but I'll turn on an articulator, so it's turning my filter on and off. This is the shape I settled on. Originally, I had it just coming down like a triangle, but I wanted some layout so that on longer notes it would go da and then fade out. So I wanted some longer control. So that's something cool you could do in Harmer instead of automating the automating the filter. I chose to do this because that's pretty much what they did, because it was the same thing every time, so you knew that it was some sort of automated filter deal. And with filters, you got to find the right filter for you because different filters can sound very different. And the resonance, so they had some sort of a resonance profile moving with the filter. I chose wide bump, made it very wide, and turned it up halfway. But turn it up all the way, yeah. So the resonance is a big thing for getting that edgy bite thing. It just turns up the volume wherever the cutoff is. And so the cutoff's turning down, so it's moving it, causing that rippy type sound to happen. I'd call it more of a wobble than a rip. But if we were to make this like a straight tone, this could sound like a rip. If I turn this up. So very, very kind of a useful sound. Now, one thing that you may consider going external for is Harmer's, because what I did is I turned the width all the way down. That's very important. And the frequencies all the way up. If I turn the frequency up, it doesn't get affected unless you invert the envelope. So, but that's the opposite direction of what we want. So the filter's got to be down, the envelope's got to be up, and the width has got to be down. The width essentially controls how steep your filter cutoff is, and that's one of the things I don't like about the Harmer filter is it doesn't go far enough. Like I can't get it all the way down to my subtone where I want it on a low pass. And other filters could do that because they're like a high pass, but that's the other direction. Like I don't want that direction. I want it going down. So I settled on the classic low pass. It might be something that if I was really getting crazy, I might open up an envelope controller and an external filter and do that if you catch my drift. But if you're not, don't worry about it. So yeah, so that's what I said that with. There are no other trickery or magic there. This is a very important move. So there's our sound, and this is the envelope I settled on. It's pretty much the only thing. Oh, I am messing with the timbre. We'll get to that. One of the other things that made a big difference, though, is check out if I get rid of the prism. Yeah, it sounds way different. It sounds like someone saying, ow, 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 ow. So that prism move spreads the harmonics and makes it sound quite different. It's very interesting using the from. I believe that's volume. I can't remember the exact. I'm pretty sure it's volume, though. They sound very different. It's an interesting deal. Go watch Armor from the Ground Up series if you're curious about why they're different. So I can't remember what it stands for, though. It's kind of funny. So timbre 1 harmonic level. I came in here and I got rid of the fundamental and a little bit of the beginning. It's basically a backwards sine saw wave. I don't know. That's a weird way to think about it. Anyways, I got rid of it. And I also adjusted the mid-range and left the high alone. Because when I was doing my mixing over here or trying to just get a better harmonic level, I was running into all sorts of weird issues with everything sounded way too squashed. And so that means that I just simply turning the volume up too much. So I had to come back and take things out, and I went the other way. And the fundamental not being there actually makes quite a large difference. You see that fundamental is gross sounding at the end. So now it's not there. Woo! And it's additive, so it's perfectly not there. It's the greatest option you have. It's literally not there at all. Okay, so that's that. Of all the other things I touched, there was another one. It's the EQ, I believe. Yep. So this is the EQ shape I settled on. It needs to be this EQ shape if you want my timbre. But you could get a whole bunch of cool sounds out of this. Like, and you can get all sorts of interesting tones. Be careful about boosting. You'll notice I was mostly cutting, mostly because of what I just said earlier. So yeah, this is what I went for. You get a huge number of tones, and it's pretty cool. You can get pretty exact sound from there. If you're going after a sound, it could be useful, but then you'll spend forever twiddling. And so I'm just a fan of getting the same sort of workflow, and then once you're there, getting your own cool sound. I am using the harmonizer. Without it, just adds more harmonics. I did move the steps around because when it was harmonically rigid, it did not sound that good. It was not doing things that I wanted. So I moved it around and did stuff. The width is actually up pretty high, but I left the strength alone. The advanced tab, I didn't look at this, but this would be an interesting option, is here. Where is the prism? See, the prism is before the harmonizer. So if you move the harmonizer after the prism, it probably wouldn't matter if it was harmonically rigid. It would get spread out. I didn't mess with that, though. Just an interesting idea that just occurred to me. The distortion I settled on is cube, and the amount is pretty high. I did move the filter up just a touch, just barely. It's barely, because if you move it up just a little bit, you can immediately hear the higher frequencies sort of sizzling on the top, and that's all I wanted, was just barely. So I barely moved it up. And then the wet is right there. That's the way. I believe I turned the distortion down, the asymmetry down a little bit. It does this crackly thing, and if you use it just a touch, it can add a nice little sizzle on top too. Which I know these are all buzzwords, but I mean, honestly, like, what do you want me to say? Like, on average, the blah 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 is pushed to maximum this much more often, or some weird really exact statement. It just adds sizzle. That was what I was thinking of when I reached for this knob. I mean, go watch my wave shaper video or DC offset. I believe I talked about it in that video. It's pretty much the same thing. It just introduces that. So we have, it's asymmetry. It's a little different, but whatever. We have compression. I didn't use that. Let's see. I did have the reverb on at one point, but I turned it off. I believe that's it for this patch. Then I came in here, EQ. That's not an EQ. This is an EQ. Took out the low end. So that's what it sounds like. It's just muddy. It didn't need any of that crap. So that is the sound. And then I was like, all right. I believe I did wave shaper first. I moved these around constantly, trying to find a tone I wanted. They really played a role on and off. Because the thing about making it sound like this is you get it and it sounds like really big, but then it's like clipping the living crap out of your channel, and you aren't paying attention. And if you're new, you do what I do. Because I leave this on here on purpose, but the gain, or if you just recently updated FL, I just do this so that I have the same template as you. For, I'm assuming, new people, opening it. So the gain is automatically on. It's a wise marketing move on FL's part, because people, when they hear the sounds and they sound louder, they go, oh, this is good, versus it sounding softer. But it's a bad mixing move, like just not good. So, but I left it on there just because I forgot it was there. And as a result, everything sounded super squashed. But I came in here, I turned on Maximus, and I'm boosting the highs. I'm applying a little bit of pre-gain, just a touch. I believe that was there when I opened it. No, I must have touched it because it shouldn't be there by default. But yeah, there's a little bit of pre-gain. Wow, I did not know I did the pre-gain thing. I turned the lows totally off, like goodbye lows. So no lows at all. Lows have been compressed out of existence. They're not going in. So now that I think about it, the lows aren't there though. So the highs, and they've both been basically an expander. And yes, that's what's going on there. That's what you get. Yeah, lows disappear. Okay, so the wave shaper. This is the wave shaper. This is the shape I settled on. Look at this. So that sort of controls that like the noise at the beginning, and then this controls the general timbre. Watch my wave shaper video. I really, you know, the more I use this, the more I love it, because if you know what you're doing with it, if you really get it, you can make some really cool crap. This is sort of like a compressor. Okay, like a really messed up, cool, distorting compressor thing. Another EQ. This time it's just a mixing EQ. Just trying to get different tones. I'm boosting instead of cutting, which is again not a good idea for. I mean, it's all right, but I could accomplish the same thing by cutting, and it'd probably sound cleaner. But I went for boosting, so there. What would be cool? I know they're working on EQ3. At least that's what has been said in the forums. By the mysterious poster of Scott. It'd be cool to meet Scott. Anyways, it'd be cool if they had a gain compensation knob on here. If you don't understand what that is, I have the Gentleman's EQ. What is it called? It's a free plugin on my free VST. If you go to that playlist, the Gentleman's Nova Dynamic Equalizer. They have a gain compensation button. Oh man, I love that feature. So cool. It basically does that for you automatically. So you can make moves like this, and instead of it boosting, it'll actually cut everything else. It's so clever, because think about it, it's way less intuitive. There's a reason I didn't do that, was because it's way less intuitive to duck everything except these spots. I'd get a different curve. So really cool features if you get a plugin with that. I have the reverb, and it's got the decay's been turned up and the wet's there, but you'll notice the reverb is down quite a bit because it was just messy. As I got farther into the mix, I'd be able to make more definitive moves towards the reverb. And then finally the limiter, which is for the kick and snare. And it is, I believe I'm only using this on the kick. And this is very important because that's like part of the song is how you mix the kick. So let's talk about writing a little bit. So the writing side of it was kind of cool. Now I was going for their rhythm. I didn't nail it because I didn't sit here long enough. But some of the things about it was that envelope and the way this interacts is very important. Another thing about the envelope real quick before we get there is you'll notice that mine starts off right away. I tried the wobble, and it didn't sound to me like that was what they did. At first, I felt like that was what they did. If I were to automate it, I'd probably do that at first. So anyways, I did not settle on that. And these things, okay, so dun dun. So they had these like little really fast sort of things in it, and it's in straight time, so it has to be some sort of a duple figure. I added these low notes in because they sound cool in the lower register. If I were to write, what I would do, let's even do it. I would clone it, go down an octave, and down here, I might lengthen this out more. And I'd bring up the distortion. And I'd clone it. I'd make a different thing specifically for being low. Yeah, because that's cool. And let's move the prism back. So yeah, that I'd do something like that and add that in later in a drop if I were to vary this throughout the track. Okay, yeah, and so that's going on. These little gaps are super important because your filter cutoff, once you've chosen your tempo, your filter cutoff length becomes really important, because if your note's long enough, you'll hear the end. And if it's not, then it will stop before, you hear the end. And so these beginning notes, they sound, it changes the movement. So writing lines like this is a little tricky in that regard. Especially he has a little, or she, I'm not sure if it's a guy or girl that wrote this. I'm not familiar with the artist. But they have a trill right there. Well, it's not really a trill. It's just a fast 16th note figure. So they do that and bang, then they have this big thing at the end. So yeah, this isn't the most interesting, in my opinion. For the mix I did, it wouldn't really fit. I'd change this. There's different styles of composition where you make your big drop first, I don't think that's how this drop is made. I think they made their cool intro thing type later, maybe had a cool lead sound, and then it came together and they ended up with what they had. But if I were to make a drop first, I would not settle on this rhythm. And this isn't their rhythm either. So it's like, yeah, I realize that this is not the most attractive rhythm quite yet. And then some other elements also help. So I added that big bass. They had a big bass hit at the beginning. I added something that was sort of like theirs. I was just looking for something big and obnoxious. And I didn't bother really mixing any of this very well. And then I added some pads. And the pads are a little interesting. They're 5... unison voice 5, pitch variation, la la la, some compression, some reverb, and the snake low pass. So this is really important. With it's up an octave with the harmonizer on, and it is going out 8. And the pads have 3 limiters on it. It's being turned down by the wobble bass, by the snare, and by the kick. And the pads also, I'd probably turn down the volume at some point on the pads just a touch. Actually, I'd turn all the volume down and then actually mix it. But anyways, the pads, yeah, they're just background stuff. It was important for a track like this. This is just a piece of white sample. It's from a Vengeance old school kick sound effects, whatever. I just needed white noise for and this is not something I'd settle on either. But it was kind of a cool idea. So, yes, that's it. Like those clicks. So on this one, I sort of monopolized on the lower end, but I didn't have a separate patch. It's the same patch. Things are really sort of fighting right now, so I'd have to go through and really give this a good mix down. Like, there's still a lot of stuff. And I didn't pan or do anything. There is some stereo imaging just from the plugin because I'm using unison differences. And so, as you can see, it's being panned quite a bit. Big stereo image. So I might mess with this. I might mess with that. I'd change the panning, which also has a big stereo image, and maybe move things around to make more room for other crap. And, you know, just go about doing what producers do. So hopefully that was a good definition, or not definition, but explanation of how I made the sound and how to make the sound. I hope you can accomplish similar results. If you do try to make the sound, it'd be cool if you posted your video down below. It's just fun. More people could see more examples. And, you know, it's cool. I don't understand why more people don't do that. It's fun. It's fun times. Get your family. Get around the computer. Say, hey, we're going to make this sound. Teach them. And then your son or daughter or whoever it is who's going to be so good at sound design when they're all growing up. Yep. Family activities, sound design. It's time for family sound design. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.